The majority of all my runs is all against fully sighted people.
Okay. And do they ever try and say you have an unfair advantage because you've got a guide runner or anything like that?
Yeah, the IAU have stated that your results aren't going to be counted if you competed. No athlete is allowed outside assistance. So I went off anyway and I looked it up. The IAU also have in their constitution the rule that states that using earphones for music can be deemed as outside assistance. But yet they were allowing athletes use music, but they didn't want me using my guide runner. So they were telling me that I had an unfair advantage over the fully sighted runners. So I said, okay, well, that's simple. Just make all the fully sighted runners wear blindfolds.
Sinead, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm actually really excited about talking to you because you made such an impression on me when we both spoke at the Irish Examiner event for International Women's Day. You were the keynote speaker. I didn't know very much about you prior to meeting you that day, but my goodness, you could hear a pin drop when you were speaking.
Yeah, well, likewise, I didn't know much about you either, but even when I was hearing your speech, I just felt empowered because you were talking about things that I suppose just wouldn't be commonly talked about. And I kind of feel as well, because of my background having a disability, there's kind of some things that you don't talk about or that hasn't been talked about over the past number of years. So I suppose I found it very uplifting just from a woman's point of view, a woman with a disability's point of view. So I really enjoyed your talk that day. When you're mentioning about my talk that day, yeah, I can't really actually remember what I talked about that day. All I remember is that I had to, like, before every speech, I get nervous. I think it's always important to get nervous, despite doing this now a good number of years. I think it always is important to get nervous because it actually means something to you. And I suppose I just have learned that once you start speaking, then I just kind of get into the flow of things. I suppose for me, the difference is that, like, when I'm speaking compared to maybe when you're speaking, I can't really fully judge the audience. So sometimes that's why I'm actually trying to get them to maybe laugh, to realise that, okay, there actually is people here in this room with me, that I'm actually not standing here talking by myself. So that's why I try and get them to laugh. So, and
well,
as
you did get us to laugh. Oh my goodness, you're a hoot. You're an absolute hoot. But before we go into that, can you just explain to people listening what your disability is, please?
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't really know me, I'm Sinead and I have disability, it's visual impairment. So I have 4 eye conditions: aniridia, coloboma, nystagmus and glaucoma. So I have about 5% vision. I can't see you. So I basically just tell everybody that they're beautiful. Everybody in my eyes is beautiful inside and out. So you can decide for yourself whether you think that's valid evidence. But anyway, yeah. So like the thing that's standing out to me now about you at the moment is white. So kind of, and then the face is very blurry.
That's probably not a bad thing. I've just had a few injections of Botox, so it's probably not a bad thing that you can't see me.
Yeah, well, speaking of Botox, like, because my eyes squint so much, and then that means I end up with loads of lines up here because of the squinting. I could do with Botox, but I don't know, it wouldn't really work out for me because my eyes will always keep squinting and everything like that.
Yeah, and so can we go back to the start? And you were born visually impaired, is that right?
So born visually impaired, my sister's visually impaired, my dad's visually impaired, and my mother's totally blind. I grew up in a small town in East Cork, Youghal, and I suppose the thing about Cork people is a person like me will just tell you that they're from Youghal, County Cork, and then another person will make sure to tell you if they're from West Cork. So, so then
is that a bit of snobbiness? Is it?
Well, I don't know. You can take what you want from it, just in case there's anybody from West Cork listening. But yeah, so like Youghal is, I'm very proud to be from Youghal. It's a seaside town. And yeah, I suppose at home I felt extremely normal because I grew up in this family where we're all visually impaired. But then when I went to school, I didn't really feel normal because I was the only person with a vision impairment. I was the only person holding a white cane, black shaded sunglasses, having loads of different magnifiers.
Why did you wear black shaded sunglasses?
Yeah, because like the light, everybody thinks about blindness as in darkness. And I think a lot of people think about blindness as in you either can't see or you can see. Whereas like and everybody just thinks about blackness, whereas it's not really like that. There's a different spectrum of blindness. And a lot of my problem is I take in too much light. So I've never really liked getting my picture taken. If I go outside and it's a sunny day, I'm always, I suppose more so when I was younger, but always fearful. Oh, where's my sunglasses? I need an extra pair of sunglasses just in case I lose the first pair of sunglasses. And
okay,
like when
is this room too bright for you? Because there's bright lights in this room. Is it too bright for you?
No, not so much because I'm not directly looking at the light.
Okay.
Whereas if the light was behind your head,
yeah,
then I would find that difficult. Like actually, speaking of light, I know now we're kind of digressing off, but I was at
this is brilliant.
I was at a speech yesterday where I went into the function room, and the minute I opened the door, I was like, whoa, this room is bright. And so I had to say to the person who's with me, like, is this room filled with glass or something? Because this is like overwhelming light. And now obviously the person who was with me, they didn't find that it was overwhelming light, but the room was filled with a load of glass windows and it was a sunny day. And straight away, I just had to say to the organiser, look, you're going to have to kind of close this, the curtain. Otherwise, I'll just have to have my sunglasses on during the speech because that I just can't. Like my eyes will get streaming water. And I think then yesterday, like some days my eyes can be quite painful. My right eye last night it was just extremely painful. And I kind of knew what the problem there was one, a small bit of lack of sleep, two, because of being in that bright room. And then last night then I was lecturing with UCC from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock last night as well. I was doing that online. So I was looking a lot at the computer. And then I was trying to talk with the students about different research articles. So I was looking on my phone as well as the computer, reading out a research article. So yeah, so I knew by the end of the night that my eye was going to be very sore.
Oh my
But anyway,
goodness.
we kind of digressed. So
do you take painkillers when it's sore, or like do you need to take anti-inflammatories?
No,
or
I
something
just
like
kind of like I try not to do that. But what I try and do is like I just try and rest my eyes or have a cold flannel on my eye to just kind of calm it down a bit.
Okay. Goodness,
So,
I'm absolutely. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know about the brightness.
Yeah. So, and then like the nystagmus is shaking of the eyes. So I suppose if you look at my eyes, you'll see that my eyes are shaking. Now, I suppose like if you kind of focus very much on my eyes, you will see that they're shaking.
I do.
And then a lot of people then think that I've dark brown eyes. Like again, yesterday at this speech, I had up a picture on my presentation and I was saying to the audience, and I was explaining my eye conditions and I was saying to them, what colour do you think my eyes are? And like, I don't know, is it that the people in the audience, do they need to get their eyes checked or what? But there was people in the audience shouting up that I had blue and grey eyes. Like, and I don't know where blue and grey was coming from because my eyes definitely aren't blue and grey. But so I was explaining to them, like, look, the eyes aren't blue or they're not grey, they're black. But a lot of people actually would say to me, oh, you've lovely dark brown eyes. But my eyes aren't dark brown, they're black. Because without it being an ophthalmology lesson, if you take off the coloured part of the eye, which is your iris, so the blue or the brown or the green, then you take light through the whole eye. So it's the centre part of your eye, which is your pupil, which is taking in the light. But if you take off, it's like a kind of donut. You take off the coloured part of your eye, you take light through the whole eye. So that's what it's like for me on a daily basis, taking light in through my eyes, like as if like the full headlights of a car shining on your eyes all the time.
My goodness. And when you close your eyes, is it dark, or does the light still come through your eyelids?
Kind of, the light still kind of comes through some of the time as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So then that's like taking in too much light is aniridia. Then the nystagmus is shaking of the eyes. I don't see depth as well when I'm going down steps, so that can kind of be difficult. The coloboma is the part missing of my eye, and then the glaucoma is the high pressure in my eye. So I remember when I used to be younger, I used to go to the hospital an awful lot to get my eyes checked every 3 months. And I remember it used to be a very unfair system because the nurse would say to who, like, the majority of people who was always there was elderly. So I did stand out a lot, getting my eyes checked for like glaucoma and getting reading of the chart. So I always did stand out, but the odd time you'd have another kid there or another child there getting their eyes tested. And so the nurse would say, oh, if you can get to the end of the chart, I'll give you a lolly. And I was kind of saying, like, well, how come that child is getting this lolly? Because, like, I'm never going to get to the end of the chart. I can only read maybe the top letter on the chart, and some days I can't even read that. So anyway, I came up with the bright idea one day. There was another kid there. I let them go first to read the chart and then memorise what they said quickly, then told the nurse that I wanted to read the chart and then read it out. And then she said, oh, well done, here's your lolly. And we got to the end. So then she wrote...
So you were a devil even back then.
Yeah, so then she wrote that down on the chart. Then the doctor then was kind of walking in and out, scratching his head, and then asked the nurse then to kind of re-examine my eyes again. So, yeah. So then I didn't get to the end of the chart then time.
And were you born with 5%?
Yeah, just
vision?
born. Yeah.
So it hasn't decreased over time. It's always been about 5%.
No, yeah. So it's always kind of been around this. Like, say with my sister, unfortunately, she has lost a good bit of sight over the last number of years, and now has a guide dog. Callie is the guide dog's name. If anybody's interested in knowing about Callie, she's on Instagram at guide dog Callie.
Okay,
so, yeah.
fab.
Black Labrador.
Oh, lovely. But you don't have a guide dog?
No, I just use the white cane.
Okay.
So, and like, I suppose sometimes if you're in a familiar environment, then I maybe won't use my white cane.
Okay.
Whereas, like, the problem for me, say, coming to Dublin is an ever-changing environment because there's always roadworks or different things changing. So that's why how I have to deal with being resilient, because I'm always in ever-changing environments in trying to navigate a city because of my vision impairment. Like, I think a lot of people take things for granted, such as in going out, jumping into their car and just driving and not realising, okay, actually I have this privilege being able to drive because I have my full eyesight. Whereas I walk the majority of places because I can't drive, and well, actually I should say I can drive, but I'm not legally allowed to drive. So,
okay.
So,
who taught you to drive?
Yeah, well, actually, so I was telling a friend of mine who's actually after becoming a priest since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, myself and him were, I don't know, was it a date or what it was? But anyway, we never said anything about it being a date or anything, but the two of us met up. We went to the cinema, we went for pizza. So and then I explained to him how I always wanted to drive a car, and he was like, oh, I'll let you drive the car. So anyway, we ended up going to this car park at 12 o'clock at night time. I'd say now, if there was people around, they must have said to themselves, what is that car doing? Because he said, get out, go into the driver's seat or whatever. Went into the driver's seat and he said, I trust you. Now, had the roles been reversed, I would not be trusting him. But then I got into the driver's seat and I was going around and around and around the car park. Now, that was my experience of driving. I didn't stall the car or anything.
Well, you can drive, so yeah. You can drive better than most people.
I kind of clipped the curb a small bit, but his overall car ended up being okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So when you were a child in school, did you read with Braille then?
No, not Braille. No, I've never learned Braille. Actually, I don't know. I don't have the intelligence for Braille. It seems very, very complicated. It's hard. Like,
okay, yeah, I didn't realise.
Yeah. So
how did you learn to read then?
Yeah, so magnifying glasses. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And you still read with magnifying glasses?
Yeah.
And are the words blur? Do the words have to be
Sometimes,
printed
like
in a
say
certain
now,
way?
yesterday, the words were blurry. Like I was in the middle with these students yesterday of reading the article, and the words kept becoming more and more blurry because of the pain in my eye. And I was like, oh God, what will I do here? I'll just check, I'll put it on them. I'll just get them to read the paragraph to see are they still fully awake listening to me. But yeah, so that's what I did then. But yeah, so I suppose use magnifying glasses and then just try to remember things as best I can. That's the way I was doing it. And then I suppose like when you're 7 and 8 years of age, then children definitely make you feel different. And I suppose I used to be all the time walking up and down to the blackboard. And I used to always find teachers' joint writing hard to understand because of maybe just the bad eyesight. It's easier to see print. And I remember this teacher giving a report to my parents like that. Oh, Sinead needs to work harder in school, especially with her writing and her reading. And because I wasn't fully understanding about the joint writing, I was given extra homework because I was deemed as not concentrating enough in class. So
Oh my
I was
goodness.
given lines. So I don't know what the line was, but it was a particular line and I had to rewrite it out about 20 to 50 times in the joint writing to make me proficient at joint writing. Now, look, it never worked. Basically, it was always just easier for me to write in print, whereas other kids would be writing in joint. So again, on reflection, like I think the school wasn't really fully taking into account my needs as a visually impaired student, that, okay, it's easier for her to work in print rather than us forcing her to write in joint writing.
Yeah, sure. It's crazy what they would have done maybe back then. And even like, I remember my dad saying, my dad's left-handed, but he writes with his right hand because he was forced to write with his right hand. And as a result, he writes very slowly. Like, thankfully, all of that has changed now. But did you have a special needs assistant with you or?
Not in primary school, and in secondary school, I had to fight to get it. And it was a very long fight to get it. It ended up being a legal battle to actually get my special needs assistant. And yeah, I got it, but I didn't get it until 4 weeks before my leaving cert. So it didn't fully really benefit me. And as well as that, the person I got had never studied French, and one of my languages was French. And she said to me one particular day, oh, what's that word on the blackboard, Sinead? I'm not quite sure how to write down the squiggles for you. And I was kind of like, well, if I could see the word on the blackboard, I wouldn't need you here. So,
oh my goodness me.
So, yeah. So, like, it wasn't very productive for me to give me somebody who'd never kind of studied French or couldn't understand how to be taking down the words. But as I was younger, I suppose we all develop coping mechanisms in life. When I was younger, I suppose developed negative coping mechanisms, as in that I decided, okay, being bullied in school, extremely badly bullied, physically and emotionally. I used to have bruises on my body. Then it was seen as, oh, she's only accident prone because of her vision impairment. Which
would kids be? They'd be
punch you.
Why?
Because you're different, and being different isn't good.
Oh my goodness.
And I suppose you're used as the scapegoat. Like it just allows people have power over you. And so then I said, okay, well, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to be enduring this. So I stopped eating, and that plan worked out very well. That kind of ended up in hospital sick. Yeah.
Oh my goodness me.
So
how long did you stop eating for until you ended up in hospital?
I can't really remember the specific timeline and dates and all of that, but in and out between the ages of 8 and 11, in and out to the hospital.
And did you tell your parents that people were bullying you?
Oh yeah, and they approached the school, and different responses was, she's accident prone, she's falling over, and yeah.
Wow.
So I suppose kind of just where, like in schools in Ireland, there's parent committees and there's communities that are quite small. And I suppose when you come from a status of a social status, where economic status, where some kids have more money than other kids and their parents might be on the board, then you mightn't be tend to be believed as much.
Wow, that's I can't get over that. What was secondary school like?
So then went into secondary school, and again in secondary school, like I do public speaking now, which is kind of weird because like back then I was extremely shy person, like really, really shy. And I remember like kind of thinking to myself, Sinead, I need to go and talk to people because they're not coming to talk to me. So I need to be outgoing. I need to try and go and talk to people. But anyway, that just didn't work no matter how much I tried to be like them, or it just never seemed enough. So every lunch break, because my house was close to the school, rather than endure the whole thing of just be sitting in the corner by myself because nobody wanted to talk to me, I always went home at lunchtime.
Were you in a mixed school?
All girls.
All girls, yeah. Okay. Oh God. And then tell me what you did the Leaving Cert then.
Yeah, so in fifth year then I went into fifth year, and I don't know, just kind of I wasn't being with battling with the school and then with battling with people bullying me. 2 weeks into being into fifth year, I came out of fifth year. Then I was out of fifth year until the following April. So I missed the majority of the fifth year.
Did you study at home or were you just...
No, because I was I tried to, but I was extremely low mood.
Okay.
So very, very low mood. So for me back then, the success was getting out of bed, getting dressed, just staying alive.
Gosh. So then, like, fast forward to sixth year or to April of fifth year, you went back?
Yeah, went back, then was asked to repeat, said no, went into Leaving Cert, and then it was just kind of like, okay, let's just try and get through this. It'll be over soon. Won't have to worry about any of these people ever again. And I don't know, there was just kind of like, say, the last day of school in Leaving Cert, you were invited, say everybody went to this park that was across the road, you were invited to go to the park, but then when you were at the park, nobody talked to you. So, so my experience of schooling wasn't really good. And then I ended up going to UCC, and it was good to see other people who had disabilities, to realise, okay, you're not the only person who doesn't have a disability, or you're not the only person who has a disability. Other people with disabilities exist. And I remember in college then I was given a lot of supports. Like I was given a personal reader, I got extra time in my exams, which a lot of people seems to think that I have an unfair advantage by getting 10 minutes on the hour per hour. And so I gladly say to anybody when they're saying that to me, because I've got that lots of times, try focus and read for 3 hours and you will see that you actually have to take rest breaks with your eyes.
Absolutely exhausting.
And then just got large print exam papers and just, I suppose, help in the library. So I got loads of help, but then I kind of said to myself, okay, I need to ease back now on all this help, because when I go into the workplace, I'm never going to get all this help. So it was kind of like getting loads of help, but then kind of being self-aware, saying to myself, okay, I have to kind of ease back on this, because I don't want to get a huge shock when I go into the workplace and have no support.
What did you study in UCC?
Law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you always determined to... So you must have done very well in your Leaving Cert to get law.
Well, just to answer your first question, I didn't always want to study law. When I was 8 years old, I had myself convinced I was going to become Daniel O'Donnell's backing dancer.
Did you? Does Daniel O'Donnell know this?
Well, I have a picture of me and Daniel O'Donnell, me sitting on his knee.
Oh.
So I don't know. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to be when I was 8. And then when
Did you do dancing when you were a child? Did you dance?
No. But
Okay.
like when I was out, well, I was dancing around the house now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But like I suppose I had it built up in my own head that I can be whatever I want to be.
Isn't that the wonder of being a child? You actually believe that. It's a terrible day when it dawns on you. You can't actually be what you want to be, isn't it?
So then, as I was saying, that between the ages of 8 and 11, I was kind of sick with being from school. So I kind of had this plan in my head that I was actually leaving school at 11 to become Daniel O'Donnell's backing dancer, that I didn't need to go to school anymore. And then, so that's what I wanted to be when I was then. And then in transition year, then I wanted to either be a radio presenter or a hotel manager.
Okay. They're like the opposite ends of the spectrum.
So I ended up doing work experience in a radio station in Cork, and then I also did work experience in a hotel in Middleton.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that put you off the both of them, did it?
So then I kind of moved on from that, and then kind of during over my years I saw that my mother and different relations of mine were advocating for their rights, trying to access cafes, restaurants, anywhere, and they could be stopped. So
what do you mean stopped?
Stopped because of having a guide dog. Like even my sisters encountered this recently 2 weeks ago. Told at the front door, you can't come in here because of the guy of the dog. And then you explain, well, as the bright harness says, it's a guide dog. And then the person at the door would say, oh, no dogs allowed. And it's embarrassing. So like I witnessed this a good number of years ago with my mother, and now I'm witnessing it with my sister.
I can't believe that happens in this day and age.
Yeah, so it does happen. And even with my sister, trying to stay in a particular hotel, again, being told that we don't take dogs, or there's an extra charge for having the dog because of the hairs from the dog. But yet maybe a family who goes in, who might be maybe drinking a lot and spill a lot of, whether it's cans of Coke or beer or whatever on the carpet, you don't really take that into account. Or a baby getting sick on the floor. So what's the kind of...
And the amount of visually impaired people that would be coming in with a guide dog would be so minimal compared to your average family going into a hotel. You think that they'd make allowances for that. Wow, I can't believe that goes on this day and age.
Yeah. So anyway, so when I just see kind of advocating for the rights of people with disabilities, when I saw that growing up, then I kind of got interested in law. And then when I was 17, I was battling my own legal case, educational rights, with the Department of Education.
Was that for your SNA, your special needs assistant?
Yeah, for different things in the school. So I took a legal case against the Department of Education. So again, I researched about what legal rights I had, etc. And then when you're working closely with a lawyer and they're explaining to you about your rights. So then at 17, I told my careers advisor teacher that I wanted to study law. She said it was a reading-based subject. You'd never be able for it. Don't bother. And she truly believed it. And then I just went off then and I researched how to get into law in UCC. Got into law. The first year was very difficult. Second year was very difficult as well because of the small print on the textbooks, always having pains in my eyes, pains in my lower back, pains in my wrist from holding magnifying glasses, and decided I was giving up and told my parents I was giving up. And then they said, okay, sure, if you want to give up, let's go to London for a shopping trip. Thought I was going to London for a shopping trip. Went to London and we didn't go shopping. We went to Chancery Lane, which is for the judges and solicitors and barristers. And they set up for me to meet a judge who was totally blind. And I sat down with him and talked about everything else other than law. And I came back full of confidence and got my law degree, got my master's, qualified as Ireland's first visually impaired solicitor. And then after that was a very bumpy road because I was working with the Legal Aid Board, which is a public state body. And the crash happened in 2009. So I qualified in March 2009. My contract ended in April 2009 and I was on a temporary contract. Anybody on a temporary contract couldn't have their contract renewed because the embargo came in. And so basically I was let go. Now there was another solicitor there that was let go as well. And I said to myself, okay, what am I going to do now? I've spent all this time trying to become a solicitor and now I've lost my job. This isn't really how life is meant to happen. And so then decided, okay, well, what can I do to get a job as a solicitor? So I applied to Law Reform Commission and they gave me a voluntary internship. They're based here in Dublin.
What does the Law Reform Commission do?
So they're a statutory body. They advise the government on different, they give, I suppose, they research areas of law that can be reformed.
Okay.
So like say, for example, when I was working there, I was researching on a scoping paper. Now, I can't fully remember about it because it's back in 2010, but from the limited amount of knowledge that I do remember of it was about should we reform the section of legislation that stated that it was a criminal offence for two intellectually impaired adults to have consensual sex outside of marriage. So back in...
Oh my goodness.
So back in 2010, when I was at the LRC, it was a criminal offence, say, for two people who might have had Down syndrome to be in a sexual relationship if they weren't married.
And who was the offender? Both of them?
Both of them. So they could be criminally prosecuted.
Oh, and why did they?
Because they said that basically to protect the person with the disability, because we all throughout the ages, we've gone from this model of the medical model of disability, which is very paternalistic, which very much sees the person with the disability that they need to be cured. And it's very authoritative. It's kind of nearly like very looking down on the person with the disability and that they're so vulnerable and that they need to be cured. So that's medical model of disability. And over the ages, we've moved from that model to the social model of disability, which sees disability as in the environment is the problem. So that it's not the person with the disability that's the problem. It's actually the environment, because the environment isn't accessible. And then we've moved from that model of disability onto the human rights model of disability. So that's kind of the current model of disability at the moment, very focused on human rights policies stemming from that we're all human, that we should have dignity, respect, freedom, choice, autonomy, self-determination. So we've kind of moved on to that now. But anyway, back in 2010, that's the kind of scoping paper that I was working on when I was in the LRC. So when I was there at the LRC, I enjoyed that, but I didn't really enjoy the fact that it was a voluntary internship. So I was doing the exact same job as a paid person, but I just wasn't being paid. So I was travelling from Cork up to Dublin, working from 9 to 5:30, so which meant like I didn't want to couch surf or anything like that. So I got up every morning at 4 a.m, got the 5 a.m. train to Dublin, got up to Dublin around 8 or 8:30, got a bus out to Ballsbridge, started work at 9, finished at 5:30, went into Houston, got the 7 o'clock train home to Cork, got back to Cork at 10 o'clock, got a taxi home 10:30, and then had a cup of tea and went up to bed by 11 o'clock, up the following morning at 4 a.m. Did that Monday to Friday.
Oh my goodness.
For 6 months.
Me.
Yeah. So anybody who kind of complains about their 20-minute commute and they're fully sighted and they're sitting in their leather-seated car, as you can tell, I'm not bitter anyway.
Not a bit of you.
But you really kind of need to reassess Like I had a lot of time to think when I was traveling up and down the train. I was like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But like, I think kind of even that experience in itself allowed me to be resilient. Like that, I suppose, like it's the journey we go on in life. Like, yes, I was there to do the job, but the process of actually getting there to get to the venue to do the job, I was learning about myself. I was learning about people around me. I'd have random people on the train, you know, those annoying people where you just want to sit by yourself and have earphones in, and you have the earphones in and they still try and have a conversation with you. Yeah. Just have to take out the earphones and have a conversation and hope that they're getting off in Limerick Junction rather than Cork. So
and the
like,
people that you were working with know that you're doing that commute every day?
Yeah. So, but anyway, while I was there, like they were very nice people and everything like that, and I think they admired my
determination and resilience.
Yeah. And when I was there, a guy said to me, oh, would you like to write an article for the Irish Criminal Law Journal? Because I used to always be talking about criminal law, and obviously because I was in the area of the criminal law scoping paper regarding this intellectual disability sexual offence issue, they said, would you like to write an article? And I said, okay. And I poured everything into the article because I was like, oh, it's only one article. And I just kind of wanted to just give it my all. And I suppose with giving it your all, then you end up writing for the Irish Criminal Law Journal for the last 14 years. So I suppose that was something good that came out of it. And then because it's deemed like as a very respected body in Ireland, the LRC, that opened doors then for me to gain interviews to solicitor firms. Now, ironically, a lot of these solicitor firms who did give me interviews, maybe they were intimidated by the disability or whatever, they rejected me. They said, oh no, well, they didn't come out and say, oh no, we're not hiring you because you have a disability. Like, they're not going to be that stupid. But they just, I felt that there was a kind of a sense in the room, a sense of fear around disability, or could we even mention the word disability? So anyway, I didn't get hired for those jobs, but strangely enough, all those solicitor firms now, they're quite big firms, have invited me to do speeches for them. So what I just do now is I just charge them double.
You're dead right. I love it. Can I ask you, did you manage to reform that disability, intellectual disability?
Yeah, so that has actually since been repealed now, to my understanding. It got changed in 2017 with the Criminal Sexual Offences Act of 2017.
Okay.
So like it kind of took from I was only one piece of the jigsaw process. Like there was obviously many other people in the LRC who helped that, because it goes from it goes from a scoping paper to a consultation paper, then presenting it to government or whatever their recommendation. So there's a long process. It doesn't just come about, Sinead Kane does a scoping paper and they're going to change the law in the country. There's a bit of a long process, but I was one part of the jigsaw puzzle, and I think it has changed now. But like, I think when even that in itself, like I think when people see people with intellectual disabilities or even any form of disability, sure, you'd never put the word sex or intimacy or masturbation in the same sentence as a person with a disability. Sure, why would a person with a disability want to be masturbating? Like,
you know what? It's so interesting that you said that, right? Because actually, when I was down in Cork, I did a little talk for intellectually disabled women. I was asked by a keynote worker, or key worker down in the HSE to come and speak to them, and there was about 10 of them to speak to them about menopause and perimenopause. So they ranged from about late 30s, early 40s, all the way up to about 60s. And the HSE key worker actually said to me there was a couple of them, and obviously they're in around maybe 50s, right? So their own mothers would have been in around, I don't know, maybe 70s or 80s. And their own mothers were against them coming to the talk because they thought that they wouldn't go through menopause. So it's like they're almost like asexual, or there are children to them still, which I find really sad, because these women actually, they were experiencing all the symptoms that, say, you and I will experience or have experienced, but they didn't quite know what was going on unless they were being told what was going on, and yet maybe there was resistance from their families.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the assignments I've given the students that I'm lecturing to on the talk that I do lecturing with the UCC Adult Continuing Education Diploma in Disabilities Study Programme. And so they have to do an assignment for me. And I've given them 6 topics. And so they can choose one of the topics out of the 6. And one of the topics is about self-determination. So what are the factors that allows a person with achieve self-determination, and what factors might impinge on that. So I suppose, like what you're talking there now about, that family can actually, so like a lot of people might say, oh, it's because of society that people with disabilities can't self-determine. But sometimes as well, a factor can be family, because again, the family themselves might be operating from the medical model of being very protectionist towards the person with disability, that we need to kind of wrap them up in wool. Now, obviously, from my understanding, how do you assess capacity? I think it's a functional test as well. The Assisted Decision Making Act 2015 talks a lot about capacity, but there would be many family members who say that they're acting in the best interest of the person with the disability, but you have to really think, are they actually acting in the best interest of the person with the disability? Because it's just like, it's something in society that I don't see talked about. Like, I think that, like, you talking about women's health and women's issues is great. I don't actually see any conversation in the public talking about women or even men with disabilities having sexual desires. And is that because, we're too afraid, we can't mention the word disability, just
and
can't.
sex at the same time.
So, or why is that? So,
very interesting.
Like, even there, like, when I was 15, I was told by the doctors that I'd be totally blind by the time I'm 21. Thankfully, it hasn't happened. But I then said to that eye doctor, and what's the kind of prognosis if I ever decide to have children? And he kind of said, it'll be a 50-50 chance of having a child that has a disability. And then he kind of implied to me, sure, you can have an abortion with the child anyway if they have the disability. And I think whatever your views on abortion is or isn't, I just felt that kind of very straightforward talking, nearly flippant remark just wasn't really taking fully account of.
He was sitting in front of a person with a disability saying, if your child has a disability,
sure, you can just get rid.
Yeah.
Like, and that kind of, what then, when you think about that, what does that say to me as a person with a disability? As in, how am I seen within society as a valued member? Because I left the room that day feeling that I'm not a valid member of society because I have a disability. And like when I'm teaching on this course or through UCC, or even to any of my corporates talking about disability, diversity, inclusion, the main point I try to get across to everybody is, why should we care about disability? The main reason why we should care about disability is because, yes, I was born with my disability, but anybody can develop a disability through accident or illness. And so if you develop a disability through accident or illness, would you not like to be in a society that shows compassion and empathy towards you? Like, I know people there who have developed blindness through diabetes. They've lost their sight and they've lost friends. People don't want to be around them anymore. I've experienced people who have had an accident and they're in a wheelchair now. Again, the friends they had no longer in their life.
Is there a reason for that? Can people just, is it that they find it difficult to deal with? Do you understand? Is there a psychological thing going on there with the friends of the person who has been made disabled?
Because there's a stigma. People see this whole thing of having a disability as in stigma. And I think as well, like, just what emotional impact does that have on the person with the disability? So when you acquire a disability, you're trying to now navigate your own world, but also navigate the world around you, of how people around you are treating you. So like, even I know another person, they ended up in an accident, ended up in a residential setting, and they ended up being there for 10 years because there was no kind of independent living suitable place for them to go.
God, yeah.
So like, another thing as well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about disability and assumptions, and like, I think people think that all disabled people like one another. We don't. There's a lot. There's plenty disabled people out there that I don't like. And like, when I go to corporate...
That fucking bitch, would you look at her?
Yeah, so I go to corporate talks and they're like, oh yeah, and we had X person in lately. And I'm like, great.
You just give them a look. A death stare, Sinead.
Or this organisation has this policy on disability, and I'm like, and they're like, oh, do you agree with it? And then you have to say to yourself, okay, do you want the real answer or the short answer or whatever? So yeah. So anyway, that's one thing, we don't all like one another. And then the other thing as well that the disability community is kind of divided on is like whether they want to be called inspirational. I know a lot of disabled people hate being called inspirational. So yeah.
Do you hate being called inspirational?
Well, given that you've told me about 40 times that you think I'm inspirational.
Say it to me. Just say it to me. Go on. You fucking hate it. Stop calling me inspirational.
So what I would say is that basically I don't mind. Some people with disabilities get very offended by it. I don't mind so long as it's coming from a place that I genuinely am inspiring you, that you're going to go out and do a 5k run because you feel inspired by my 24-hour distance of 209.700.
You had to get that in. I was coming to the running now, and now you just landed me in it now as well.
Or my Guinness World Record for furthest distance for any female on a treadmill in 12 hours of 130.500. So if you're inspired from that to do a 5k, then I'll take on board the inspirational. But if you're just saying, oh, you're inspirational
because you're blind, because you're, you've a disability, or then you don't want that.
No.
It's like, feck off. That's like, okay, I get that. I fully get that.
Yeah. So, and then I suppose another thing about disabled people, some people might say, oh, so I suppose you don't drink because of your disability. And there's just this perception that, I don't know where it comes from, but that people with disabilities don't drink. I know lots of people with disabilities who drink.
And they also snort coke.
Yeah.
And they also love smoking weed.
Yeah. So even there, I told these students with the UCC course that I'm teaching on, that to watch this Netflix documentary. It's called Crip Camp. And I don't know, have you seen it or anything like that? It's a documentary. But basically it's kind of set in the 1970s in America. And all these people with disabilities go to this summer camp. And it's a specific summer camp for people with disabilities, and at it they can feel that they can completely be themselves because it's a camp for people with disabilities. But it shows them showing not so much sexual fantasies, but say love, or that they like other people, that they can express that. It shows them drinking alcohol. It shows, and like even just being asked, okay, well, like deciding on, okay, what are we having for dinner? Them in the consultation process and all of this. So like these are all just very basic things that humans take for granted. So from that camp, people could express themselves through maybe alcohol, through love, and then they went on to advocate for the rights of people with disabilities in America and got changes made in America regarding law and policy. So I suppose the purpose of telling people about that documentary is to show that people with disabilities, they're human, they feel, they want the same desires as normal people.
And do you find that people, do they treat you like a child sometimes, or do they over fuss about you?
Sometimes they do, yeah.
And does that annoy you?
I
suspect you just put them in their place, or like you nicely put them in their place. Maybe if they're annoying you, do you, or do you just let it go because you know that it's coming from a good place? Or how do you deal with that if you're feeling like as if they're patronising you, but they're not trying to patronise you? I don't know. Yeah,
no. Sometimes like kind of some people will kind of say, like in the past, they might have said, "Oh well, so what cert course are you doing?" Automatically they'll think that you're of a lower educational standard than what you are.
Says Mrs. PhD by 2 here, by the way.
So, but like, even though you don't have to obtain education standard to that high effect, but like it's just even that stereotyping of you must not have education, or and so I suppose kind of you just let the people go on, and then you just kind of tell them afterwards, okay, if you ever need legal advice, I'm a qualified lawyer and 2 PhDs, and if you ever want to do running, I can run with you to Guinness World Records. So then you just kind of tell them later on that. You let them talk, and then you just kind of talk at the end.
And then do you watch or feel their face fall?
Yeah, they just kind of stay silent then.
Okay. They start backpedaling.
Yeah.
Can we talk about your running and how you got into it? Because it's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, so I started running when I was 30 in 2012.
Like, that's mental. That's so old to start running. Usually people start when they're teenagers. What in the name of God made you start running at 30?
I did it because I was at Stewart for Child Vision. I didn't have a clue what 10K was. 10K could have meant from here to the front door. And I was always, as a child, never involved in sport or PE in school, because basically they felt that, okay, like you can't contribute in your PE class. So, and anyway, in PE, no other pupil wanted to pick me to be on their team, and those who did pick me on to be on their team made sure to let me know that they didn't want me on their team. So I just felt that it was better to sit on this PE bench. So anyway, as I say, that when I got, like, I was involved in Irish dancing, and I was involved in a bit of swimming when I was younger, and then I also did a bit of taekwondo. But that was through the advocacy of my parents rather than through the school being encouraging. And then, so at 30, I was asked to do this 10K for Child Vision, said yes, didn't have a clue what it was, and then started training 8 weeks, found it difficult to find a guide runner, found a guide runner.
Explain what a guide runner is.
Yeah, so person, they're your eyes, so you run with a tether with them. You use a kind of line, and both of you hold it, and then you just run side by side.
Okay. Oh, I thought that you just run side by side and they guide you by talking.
Yeah, well, you can do that depending on your level of vision.
Okay.
But I normally always use a tether, so it's kind of like a line between the two of us. So found it hard to find a guide runner, did 8 weeks training, and then at the end of the women's mini marathon, I raised a good bit of money for the Child Vision and did the 10K in 55 minutes. I was very happy with myself, and it kind of boosted my self-confidence.
You did the 10K in 55 minutes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So then I joined a running club, and they were kind of like, oh, don't run faster than 8 minute miling in case you fall and hurt yourself. And then they'd say, oh, we're all going outside now to train outside, and you just stay on the track there and run by yourself. So I felt like a caged animal, that I wasn't progressing in that running club. So I left that running club. Then I was out of running. And then I met another guide runner in, was it February 2014 or so, started doing a few runs with him. Then automatically decided, I want to do a half marathon. Did a half marathon in June 2014. Finished that and decided at the end of that it wasn't that difficult.
And was this a half marathon with other disabled people? Or
no, this was Cork half marathon.
Okay.
The majority of all my runs is all against fully sighted people.
Okay.
So I did anyway the Cork half marathon, and at the end of that I was kind of like, what's all this kind of like stuff about half marathons are hard. Like, that wasn't really that hard, and sure, I may as well do a full marathon. Sure, it's only 2 half marathons. That's what I said in my head.
Oh my God, you're mad in the head. I love it.
Yeah, you won't want to be in my head.
Actually, listen,
a lot of things could happen to you if you're in my head. So in July 2014, anyway, decided I want to do the Dublin Marathon in October 2014, and needed a guide runner, and nobody came forward, despite all the running clubs in Cork. Not to be giving a dig to any kind of running club.
How do you advertise for a guide runner, like in the Examiner?
No, just kind of, if the Examiner wants to take the advert, but like at the time I just word of mouth and tried to do it on social media in 2014, and put out this tweet, that if no guide came forward, that I wouldn't be doing the full marathon. And at the time I was doing work for Childline, the ISPCC, so answering the phones for Childline. I'd been there voluntary for 7 years at that time, and so I decided I wanted to do this first marathon for them. And so no guide runner came forward. Now, this guy then, when I put out a tweet saying like, no guide is coming forward, so blind girl won't be doing her first marathon in October 2014, therefore Childline won't be getting any money. And like, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, how much more sympathy do you need? Blind girl children's charity, and nobody is coming forward.
You're tugging on everyone's heartstrings there. No one's coming forward. Jesus, they're hard, aren't they?
So basically, anyway, what happened then? I'm distracted by the fact that you've taken off your shoes.
Sorry,
you're that comfortable with me.
Do you know what? I'm sorry now. I took them off because they're fucking high heels, and I never wear high heels. But I was out somewhere today where I had to wear high heels, and I'm just really comfy now talking to you. I'm sorry. If you want to take off your shoes, you can. Somebody actually in the chair.
God, you wouldn't want to see my feet arched at a London Marathon. I've about 10 toenails, miss.
I've had a couple of people take off their shoes and their socks and get very comfortable here and have a little sleep halfway through. And
okay, well, I'm glad that you don't have smelly feet. So yeah, but anyway, where were we? So anyway, I found this guide runner anyway, or I couldn't find a guide runner, and then this guy came forward. I put out a tweet looking for a guide for my Dublin Marathon, and this guy came forward and he said that he'll be my guide. So I was travelling up on the train for 3 hours to Dublin, because he was based in Dublin, to do a 2-hour run to then travel back down the train for 3 hours. So I was travelling for 6 hours to do a 2-hour run. So yeah, that didn't make, on reflection, that didn't make a lot of sense.
No.
I should have just went to the gym and went on the treadmill, but I wanted kind of to experience the outdoor experience, what it was going to be like in the marathon. So anyway, this guy at the time said to me, you should meet up. That guy wasn't able to do the Dublin Marathon with me, but he said that he just helped me as in the training part. So anyway, he said to me, what's your longest run? And I kind of said like 13 miles and a bit, the bit being 0.1. So he then said, okay, let's do maybe a 15 or an 18 mile run. So I went kind of straight into like an 18-mile run, which I kind of shouldn't have done. And then I banjaxed my knee. So then for about 3 weeks in September, I was out of running because I just shouldn't have done that, because like that's how you get injured. But anyway, this guy said to me, you should meet this guy called John O'Regan. He has ran with blind people before, such as Mark Pollock, and he'll be able to give you tips for whatever guide runner you use for the Dublin Marathon. So that was fine. Met up with John. I asked him for tips as to, because he was going to be pacing in the Dublin Marathon that year. I think he was 3-hour pacer or something like that. And I was just getting tips from him, like, oh, what sections will be tricky for my guide.
What's a pacer?
John was pacer that year in Dublin Marathon. So pacer is that, like, if all runners in the Dublin Marathon want to do 3 hours, they'll go with the pacer. So like he'll make sure that you come in 3 hours.
Okay.
So like you in marathons, you'll have different pacers. So like there'll be maybe a 4 hour pacer, 3:30 pacer, 3 hour pacer. And I think they kind of stop at about 2:40. Then anybody under 2:40.
They're the pros.
Yeah, they're out to win.
Okay, grand. Okay.
Yeah. So so I met up with him and I was asking him for tips as to where it's going to be congested, what parts are tricky for my guide runner, because he had done the Dublin Marathon previously, and he gave the tips anyway and all of that, and that was all fine. And at the end of it, he kind of said, have you any more questions? So then very innocently, I said, well, if on the day it's raining, will they cancel the marathon? Because I don't want to travel all the ways from Cork up to Dublin and the marathon cancelled. And he was kind of like, this girl like is just stupid. They're not going to cancel the marathon if it's raining. So he kind of said like, no, they won't cancel the marathon. Then I said, but even if it's like hailstones or thunder or lightning, he's like, no, they won't cancel the marathon. You live in a country where it all the time rains. There's about 15,000 people in the marathon and it takes about a year to organise it. So no, they're not going to cancel it. So that was a big disappointment for me, knowing that even if it was raining, that they weren't going to cancel it. So then anyway, he said to me, you should really get into your nutrition and all this. Now I'm vegetarian. I don't eat fish. I don't eat meat. I don't eat many vegetables. Don't eat much fruit either.
What do you eat? What do you eat?
So
Pasta?
I'm not a good person for advocacy for nutrition. But anyway, I wanted to kind of impress him to kind of say, oh yeah, I'm great with the nutrition for the running. So I went to the supermarket and he was saying like, oh, make sure to eat all your greens and all of this. So I picked up this product thinking to myself, oh, this will impress him now if I tell him that I've ate this. So I rings him and I said, what's magnet out? And he was like, what are you on about? You'll have to send me a picture. I don't know what you're talking about. So I sent him a picture of Magnet Out, which I thought was called Magnet Out. And he said, he rings me and said, Sinead, that's not Magnet Out, that's Mange 2. So that was my level of understanding of nutrition and of the Dublin Marathon. So anyway, did my marathon. During the marathon, I lost my guide runner.
Why did you lose your guide runner during
Because I just said to him, like, we need to up the pace. And he was like, if you want to up the pace, off with you. So I did off with me and then realised, okay, how do I go forward? Because like I can't see where I'm going and there's loads of people come behind me. Yeah. I saw a guy in a white t-shirt. I asked him to help me. He just disappeared. So he clearly didn't want to help me. And then I saw a guy in a blue t-shirt and he said, oh, what do you want to do? What do I need to do? And then I just said, like, look, just let me hold on to your forearm and just tell me if there's any ramps or anything like that. So he said, what time do you want to do your marathon in? And I said 4 hours. And he said, quick. It's 3:59 on the clock, because this was kind of near the finish. And I started crying and he must have thought like, okay, this girl like gets very emotional or whatever. But anyway, I started crying and then went over to the mat and my time was 4:01. Because basically they let the visually impaired people off in Dublin Marathon at that time. Not all marathons do this, but they let the visually impaired people off 2 minutes beforehand, but those 2 minutes get added on at the end. So even though I came under in 3:59, my official time was 4:01. Now, because I wanted to do 4 hours, like life was over for me. I was never running again. Nobody could talk to me. I was in a very bad mood. John came up to me at the finish line and he's like, oh, how'd you get on with your marathon? So I said, I don't even feel like I've run a marathon. Like don't talk to me. I don't really know you. I only wanted to talk to you about tips for guide runners. Why are you talking to me? So I was just in a really bad mood that day. And like when I said to him, oh, I don't even feel like I've run a marathon, I think he thought I was being quite arrogant. But then unknown to me, he was observing me and realizing, okay, she can actually walk fine. So then he said, I think your talent lies in ultra running. You should do an ultra. I asked, what was that? He said, any distance beyond marathon. Then I said, well, sure, who's going to do it with me? Then I said, you should do it with me. You should put your money where your mouth is. And so then on the Dublin Marathon finish line, it was agreed that he was going to do a 50k with me in the February 2015. And so from the November 2014 to February 2015, we kind of started training, and I did my run in February 2015 with him, 50k in the Donadee Forest Park. He had previously ran in that park, but got blindfolded by his friends to see what it was like for me from my perspective, and realised that, okay, everything that he thought he knew about the forest park that he didn't know when the blindfold was on. Because when the blindfold was on, he thought he was in a specific location due to the turns and the terrain on the ground and everything. When he took off the blindfold, he wasn't in that location at all. So,
okay.
And he just noticed more things of the tree roots coming up through the ground and all of that. So following on from that, then we did the women's mini marathon. Then which difficulty for John to get into, because basically it was a women's only event. Advocated for policy change there, got policy change there.
You did?
Yeah.
Do you just like advocate for policy change everywhere you go? You turn here, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to just advocate for policy change.
Yeah. When there's issues, I think it's important. So then,
do you pay your guide runner?
No.
Okay.
It's all voluntary.
Okay.
So and so obviously that has to come from him, from a place of him wanting to do it. I've more guides now based in the UK rather than in Ireland, so I've a selection of guides now. And that
so you don't just have the one?
Yeah, it's built up over a number of years now.
And so how do you choose which one to use?
It kind of went from, say, having John, and then it filtered out to having John, Louis and Philip. And then it filtered out from that again to having one or two more. And then just every time I had a race, then say I do 24-hour running. So obviously to have one guide running with you for 24 hours would be a head wreck, listening to that voice for 24 hours. And obviously it'd be difficult for not only me listening to that person, but that person trying to concentrate as well. Like, so. And
when you 24-hour run, are you doing it on a treadmill or are you doing
on a track? So I got onto the 24-hour Irish team. To get onto the 24-hour Irish team, you have to achieve a minimum of 200 kilometres or above. So I achieved, my PB in 24 hours is 209.7, and that was achieved in, when was that achieved now? Oh God.
What does PB stand for?
Personal best.
Okay.
So I got the 204.6 in April 2019, and then I think it was April 2022 when I got the 209.7.
And do you ever sleep during that 24 hours?
Yeah, well, you can lie down, you can rest, you can go to the toilet, you can eat, drink, do whatever you want, but you're not going to be in the top three. And I'm not there just to like participate. I'm there to win.
Oh my goodness, I would not like to go up against you in anything.
Well, I've come second female in 3 12-hour track races. Like, second female now is getting really boring. So
okay, you're like, I fucking want to win now.
Like, even if people in that situation want to say, oh sure God, she has a disability, that they let me win. Like, I've got that stage.
Would you let Sinead win, for God's sake? So you're running against people that do not have any disability at all, and you're still coming second.
Yeah. So like, I did a 24-hour race in Crawley in the UK. I came 4th overall. I came second female. 4th overall meaning between men and women. So 4th overall, second female. And what I learned from that race is men don't like being beaten, and they don't like being beaten by a girl, and they definitely don't like being beaten by a blind girl. So that's what I learned from that race.
And do they ever try and say you have an unfair advantage because you've got a guide runner or anything like that?
Yeah. How did you know about that?
Maybe you did mention it in that speech that I heard you.
Yeah. So basically, with my case, when I tried to get to go to the World Championships, 24-hour World Championships in Albi, France in 2019, I basically got the standard, got the 204.6, expected to be selected in the July 2019. My name wasn't on the Athletics Ireland website. Asked Athletics Ireland why it wasn't there. They said the IAU, International Association of Ultra Running, have stated that your results aren't going to be counted if you competed because you're breaching an IAAF rule which states that no athlete is allowed outside assistance. So when people mention the word rule, and being a solicitor, solicitors get excited with the word rule. So I was like, what's this rule I'm breaching? So I went off anyway and I looked it up, and it's this rule, no athlete is allowed outside assistance. But yet the IAU also have in their constitution the rule that states that using headphones can be deemed, our earphones for music can be deemed as outside assistance. But yet they were allowing athletes use music, but they didn't want me using my guide runner. And then, so they were telling me that I had an unfair advantage over the fully sighted runners. So I said, okay, well, that's simple. Just make all the fully sighted runners wear blindfolds. So, like, it's easy, like, solution solved. But anyway, they didn't want to go with that. And so, anyway, I had to take a legal case. I tried to reason with the IAU between July 2019 and the October 2019. And the World Championships was going ahead on the Saturday. The Irish team was flying out on the Thursday, and their legal team was to tell me by 5 p.m. on the Wednesday whether I was allowed to go or not. And at 4:59, an email came into my solicitor to state that I was allowed to go. Now, whether that email came in saying I was or wasn't allowed to go, I was still fighting. I was like say now they sent the email on the Wednesday saying I wasn't allowed to go. I was not going to just let it be that. I was still going to be fighting.
You'd already booked the flight, hadn't you?
Yeah, the weekend before I had booked the flight. I was going to be on that plane, whether they wanted me on the plane or not. Because leaving it to the Wednesday, you just weren't going to get a seat on the plane by then. But I did feel excluded to the extent that all the Irish team were kind of sitting one apart, and I wasn't really kind of fully sitting with them. The Irish team were in a different hotel to me, because just had I got the opportunity to book into the hotel that they were previous, then I'd feel more excluded. But because it came at such a late notice for me to go, I had to go to a different hotel. So even though I was there and it was my first experience of representing Ireland at 24-hour ultra running, it was kind of, I don't know, bittersweet because I got to go there. But I remember on that Thursday night when we arrived there, I actually had conversation with two of my guide runners that I actually wanted to go home because I just felt so excluded. Yeah, and then some people say stupid things like, oh, sure, if you're having a bad day, your guide runners can carry you. Now, saying something like that, it is quite offensive to me. When that throwaway comment is used, It implies that it just takes away from all the hard work that I've done to get there. And that's the main point. Like, I didn't get there by just sitting around and get handed to go there. I put time, energy, effort, money. Like, I not only have to pay for my flights, my guide runners' flights, their accommodation, their food, maybe if they have to take leave off work, I'm paying for all that. So, like, that's all time, energy and effort and hard work on my part so far, and it meaning something to me. So for somebody kind of saying, oh yeah, sure, like, if you get tired, sure, your guide runners can carry, that's kind of like insulting to me.
Kind of, it's an absolute insult.
Yeah. So anyway, got to go, and at that time it just I felt very excluded. And that case, like, I see myself as a very resilient person, but that case really edged away at my self-esteem, at my confidence. I felt like that I was back in school again, being bullied. And like, I suppose there was one particular evening where I just kind of felt like, oh, like, what's the point in continuously advocating for people with disabilities' rights when it's this constant barrier after barrier after barrier? And I just was feeling really, really low on myself.
And were the rest of the Irish team not? Were they not?
They were all going. They, like, people say, oh, we stand with you. But I didn't see any of them saying, well, we're not getting on the plane.
Yeah.
So now at the end of the day, it doesn't bother me whether they got on the plane or not, but that was just an observation that I made that. And I suppose that comes down to values. And I think it also comes down to, as well, runners are very, very selfish people.
Are you in that category?
I suppose sometimes, maybe. So like runners, when they have a time in mind, they're just only about their time. And then... so anyway, this particular night I was kind of feeling quite down. I rang a friend, I was bawling on the phone, crying, and just felt that life wasn't really worth living. And thankfully that person calmed me down, made me see reason. I suppose see reason just for those few moments, because I just could not see any way forward whatsoever.
Really? You were that low?
Yeah. And then the following morning, then I went and got professional help because I needed it from my doctor, and ended up then seeing, I suppose, different people in the sphere of psychiatrists and psychologists. And that's kind of the effect that case had on me. So I won the case to get to go to represent Ireland, but it had a very, very severe impact on my mental health. And people won't know how severely it did have an effect on me, because basically just there was many days where just, I suppose, you don't see the tears or just that loneliness.
And when you feel you're always fighting, it's tiring, isn't it?
Exhausting. Like, even though, like, say, even Ireland has ratified the UNCRPD, Convention for the Rights of People with Disabilities, and there's a thing called the optional protocol, which hasn't been ratified, which Simon Harris says that he's going to get ratified and implemented in Ireland. But yet, you can say, okay, once, like, people think, okay, once this is ratified and implemented, it's going to solve all your problems as a person with disability. It's not, because you still have to exhaust all remedies first before you can use that optional protocol to go to the European Court of Human Rights or to the UNCRPD to state that my rights as a person with disability are being breached. So what exhausting all remedies in Ireland means is that you basically have to go through all the court system to be rejected. So to go to the High Court, for them to strike out your case, go to the Supreme Court, them to strike out your case, and then move on further.
Does it cost money to take these cases?
Yeah, so even that case that I took, like, I wouldn't have been able to take that myself based on my means, but thankfully at the time Richard Donovan helped me financially to take that legal case.
Yeah, it's just people don't actually realise. And also, you think of all the other people out there with disabilities that don't have a legal background or don't understand the law, that maybe think, oh, look, there's no point, I don't want, and you understand the law and you still have to fight and fight and fight.
Yeah.
And are you fighting currently for anything?
Not that I can think of, but
do you have any races coming up? Or
I did the London Marathon recently, and so I achieved the high performance standard for the Paralympic marathon. So all my running to date has kind of been mainly focused on ultras against fully sighted runners, but now I've kind of started more focusing on shorter distances. Shorter distance being the marathon.
So short, yeah. I trained for a marathon once and I got to the 15-mile mark and then, had an excuse to give up and just kind of never went back to the training. So I never completed one, but
they'll have to get you come running with me.
I'll have to come running with you.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah. Suffer it out.
I will. And then I can say you inspired me.
Yeah. If you're able to have 3 babies, like, that was actually one of the mantra lines that kept going over in my head when I was running in the 24-hour track race. When I was feeling sorry for myself and saying, oh, I don't want to do this, I kept saying, Sinead, get over yourself. Women go through labour and that's more tougher. So just get over yourself and get on with it.
I love that attitude, actually. So true.
Yeah. So as I was saying there, I did the London Marathon, got the high performance standard for the Paralympic Marathon. The way the kind of Paralympics work, and I'm only kind of learning about it, so I don't have all the answers, but each country gets a certain number of slots, and if you achieve the high performance, you get maybe a slot for Ireland, but that doesn't mean that you're getting it for yourself. You're getting it more for the NCP, which is the National Paralympic Committee, so being Paralympics Ireland. So it's up to them then how they decide to use that slot.
So they could have several people that they choose from.
Yeah,
Is
so
that it?
through the different sports like the swimming, the cycling, the running. So, and they're probably most likely, and this doesn't go just say for Paralympics Ireland, each country, the Paralympic Committee for each country, they're most likely to pick people who are potential to medal. So look, that's my next goal, to try and get to go to Paralympic Marathon. If they select me, they select me. If they don't, then I'll be very upset. And I'll just kind of hide for, no, I won't hide. I basically will be resilient. I'll get on, I'll cry it out for a day or two, and then I'll say, Sinead, snap out of it and use your training for something else. Okay. And go and say, well, okay, maybe I'll do some other marathon or something.
Can I ask you how you learn to trust your guide? Because that would seem to me that it would be, you're literally putting your life in someone's hands to a certain extent, because you could trip and fall and, land on your face.
Yeah, I definitely, no matter how experienced your guide is, John let me fall last year at the Trans-Sahara Marathon.
So John's your favourite guide, is he?
Maybe. Up until the Trans-Sahara he was. But then when basically at the Trans-Sahara Marathon he let me fall, and basically I split my knee open against a rock. And yeah, so.
And how did he let you fall? Did he just take his eye off the ball?
Yeah.
Or how did it happen?
Yeah.
He didn't see the rock, or what didn't he see? Tell me what happened. I need to know.
Yeah.
John's next door. I'm going to go out and have it out with him now. I'm going to ask him exactly what happened.
The Trans-Sahara Marathon was a race over 4 days, 140 kilometres. Now, when I think of Sahara Desert, I think flowing sand.
Yeah,
okay?
I do too.
I don't think of rocks, but on the first day it was a load of rocks, and you had to go all over these rocks, and he kept saying, lift your feet, lift your feet, lift your feet. And like 10 kilometres into the race, I lost concentration, he lost concentration. It was actually in an area that actually wasn't that tricky compared to other areas. So maybe we just let our guard down or something. Anyway, he let me fall. I fell, split my knee open against a rock. Because of my bad eyesight, I couldn't see how bad it was. He has a picture of it. I don't want to see the picture. I haven't seen the picture, but anytime he shows the picture to anybody, there's a gasp. So obviously I know that it's probably not great. But yeah, so anyway, as well, we were told not to press the SOS button unless it's life or death. We were told that the night before, and John pressed the SOS button. So in that moment, I got more angry with him for pressing the SOS button rather than tending to my knee. So he just said, Sinead, you need to be quiet. We need to get your knee sorted. Just stop talking about me pressing the SOS button. We need to get your knee sorted. So anyway, the medical kind of aid station was at 11 kilometres. So we walked from 10 kilometres to 11 kilometres. The doctor basically then said, I need to stitch up your knee. And it was only at that point when I heard the word stitch that I realised, oh God, my knee must be quite sore.
Gashed.
Yeah. And I don't do well with blood or needles. And so, yeah, I just remember even like the purpose of a guide is to be your eyes, right? But in that moment, the purpose for John was to just let me know that everything was going to be okay. And he knelt beside me and he held my hand, and I basically nearly broke all of his knuckles from squeezing his hands so much when they were doing what they were. Because she poured a load of iodine solution onto my knee, which just drove my knee crazy. Yeah, so then anyway, they did all what they had to do. They put on the bandage, and then they said, here's the Jeep. And I was like, what are they talking about the Jeep for? They said, basically race was over for me. And then the doctor said, because where you've split your knee, it doesn't matter whether you walk or run, it's going to keep opening. So I kind of reframed that in my head to say to myself, okay, well, sure, if it's going to keep opening, I may as well just run. because if I'm going to be walking and it's opening, I may as well run when it's opened. So I don't think they wanted me to reframe it in that way. They were kind of like saying it in a negative way, but I kind of reframed it in a positive way.
So you're on.
Yeah. So then they were like, no, we don't think you should run and all this. So then I just had to use the solicitor power of skills persuasion and just say, like, look, I'll go for a kilometre. And how about after the kilometre, I'll reassess then. And then basically it was clearly in my head, there was no reassessing at 1 kilometre. I was just going, but you just had to kind of tell them that. And anyway, there was about 3 doctors as athletes on the thing. So like I kind of felt like, look, I'm in safe hands here. There's like a dermatology doctor. There's a guy, a brain surgeon who's running this as well. Like there's loads of doctors in this race. Like I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
So again, I just kind of convinced myself of that. There was doctors in it, but that's why I kind of said like there is like a lot of people there. So at the end of each day, I was brought to the medic tent. The guy did what he needed to do with my knee and given antibiotics because by the end of the first day my knee was badly infected and yeah, so every time you had to get the bandage changed it was quite sore, but anyway it just went on anyway. And the second day you had to climb up the Atlas mountain, which again I have a fear of heights, and halfway up I just got a panic attack and I held onto the rock. John was like, look Sinead, we can't just stay here stuck at this rock. We either need to go back down or we need to go up. Like I'm not staying here for the whole time. So he need to kind of use a lot of encouraging, supportive language. And then when he realised that wasn't working, he just had to say, look, will you ever kind of move?
Okay.
But yeah, he encouraged me to just realise that, like, look, I'm not going to let anything happen to you.
Yeah.
Despite, he was saying that to me, despite me thinking, well, you kind of let me fall yesterday. I kind of have a split knee. But he was like, apart from that, I'm not going to let you fall down the side of this mountain.
Okay.
So yeah, so I just had to kind of trust him. So like kind of trust went, but I suppose I just kept saying to myself, how I got the trust in him first day was, I suppose, just his intention for wanting to be my guide.
And why did he want to be your guide? Why does someone want to be a guide runner and not just run themselves and win medals themselves or win races?
Yeah, well, my other thing as well is because he had experience as well. So that was another reason that built trust for me. But I don't know, like you might have to do a podcast with different...
Maybe I'll do one with John.
Yeah. You could even bring in Louis or whoever else as well. And they can all bring in the ones who talk nicely about me.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, speaking of Louis, right? So basically, Louis is very quiet type of personality. And then Philip is very energetic. And John then is just basically John. And anyway, so we're at this 24-hour race in Finland. And Louis said to me an hour into the race, oh, you're sweating. And I was like, oh, God, I don't really need you to tell me that. Because this race is hard enough now without you pointing out the kind of how I'm not really looking great. But anyway, he was just kind of pointing out that his purpose for pointing it out was to show that we need to kind of control now your fluid intake and all of this type of thing since you're sweating. But anyway, I just didn't want him telling me that. And so I kind of said, look, Louis, why are you kind of saying this to me? I don't need this. And then he started talking back to me, right? But previously, before that, he'd never talked back to me because he's a quiet person. So I was like, wondered, where's all this kind of talking back to me coming from? So I asked him directly, where's all this talking back to me come from? He said, oh, well, John said I need to stand up for myself to you. So I said, do you know what?
So have you got a bit of a reputation then, Sinead, do you?
So I said, do you know what you do? When you're going around the next lap, because John was only there just to kind of basically observe and kind of just observe whatever, basically do no work. Just let Louis and Philip do all the work. But anyway, I said, do you know what? The next lap, you tell John is on next lap. So we ran past the table anyway. And I said, John, you're on next lap. So John came on and basically I just told him what I taught him. So then, yeah. So kind of with what motivates a person to be a guide runner, I'm not, like, I suppose it comes from maybe their background, their experience. Empathy is obviously a huge thing. So personality, I think personality is a big thing for people. like their personality. Like I have had guide runners in the past do it for wrong reasons. So like one particular guide runner was like, oh, you need to mention me in the local paper and make sure that my name is in and all this. And like at the end of the day, I can't control whether the journalist says your name or not, that you did all this help or not. Like that's not within my control. And this person got very upset because their name wasn't mentioned. So clearly that person was doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, so I suppose each of them, you have to ask those people why they do it. But I think it comes probably down to personality, maybe their upbringing, their values in life, wanting to give back. Sometimes it doesn't work out with the guide runners. Like there, I really had to, because I fund all this myself, pay for the guide runners, I got onto the Irish team for 100k, and that was the ACP Anglo-Celtic Plate, and that was on in Scotland. And rather than like paying for guide runners to go from Ireland over to Scotland, I just asked this girl over in Scotland who actually runs with a visually impaired child, would she know of anybody that could guide me for this ACP? So she got about 6 or 7 guides for me. They were all going to maybe do 10 or 15k with me or whatever. And 2 out of all of them worked out. Basically 2 didn't work out. Okay. And the reason why 2 didn't work out is basically, and I was only meeting all of these for the first time on the day. So like she obviously had experience of running with a child who was visually impaired. So she knew what to look out for in the characteristics of the personality. So she mostly got it right except for 2.
Okay.
So
because it's quite it's a very close relationship if you're just meeting someone the first time.
So but like a good number of years ago I wouldn't have allowed myself to do that, and that's why a good number of years ago I would only ever run with John. And he kind of said to me, look Sinead, you're really limiting yourself, because basically there could be lots of races that you could do, but because you'll only run with me and I'm not available all the time, then you're not getting to run these races. So then he introduced me to Philip and Louis, and I started running with them. And that kind of, again, I was very, at the beginning, not wanting to do it because I just only wanted to be running with John. But I had to allow myself be open-minded to kind of, like, trust is earned. Yeah. And it was through working with me and getting that experience that they earned my trust. And it got to the point then where it's not even just the trust in the running around, it's actually in the social as well. So like you have to kind of be very comfortable around them. You have to feel that they're not judging you. Like for example, in that 12-hour race that I first did with Louis and Philip, we went to the bathroom and I had to feel comfortable to say to Louis or Philip to come into the bathroom after me and say, like, sorry, can you check my urine there, that there's no blood in my urine? Okay. And they'd look at my urine and there might be a load of blood in the urine because I'm dehydrated from running around. Now, I had to kind of allow myself be comfortable to say to them, oh, can you like look at my urine? Because like not everybody would want to be saying that to kind of somebody that they're only just getting used to. So I didn't do that at, like, say, I had a cup of tea, coffee with them or whatever, did the race with them. And it was only through getting to know them and them earning that trust that I allowed myself, okay, well, I can open myself up to them outside of the running, say, for the whole thing of coming to the toilet or whatever. Yeah.
And have you ever had a female guide?
Oh yeah, I've had female guides. So that race in the UK that are in Scotland that I was telling you about, where 2 of the guides ended up not being right or working, was one of them was a really tall guy. I don't know, he must have been about like 6'5" or 6'7" or something, and I'm 5'4". So when you're holding on to the forearm, like my forearm had to be like up here.
Okay.
If I felt I was going to fall, because he like. My shoulder was literally to his hip.
Okay, so, yeah.
So I just said, like, look, you're a really nice guy, but like I can't run with you for an hour because I have a habit of grabbing onto the forearm if I feel that I'm going to fall. So, and then he just had to not take it personally. He just had to see, okay, well, this is what's best for her. And then And then the girl then, basically I said to her, like, what pace am I doing? Oh, I think you're doing 8.5 minute miling. Okay, I can't have I think. I need specifics. So then when I asked her again and she said, oh, I'm not fully sure. Like, then I just said, like, look, I can't be dealing with that. And then we ran around and I said, new guide runner, next lap. And then she had actually gone past the table with me. And because of my bad eyesight, I didn't realise that I'd gone past the table. And the loop, I think, was like 2 kilometres or 2 miles or something. I can't fully remember. But we had a good, like, 15 minutes of running left with one nurse. So then I knew that she knew that I didn't want to be running with her. And so that was very awkward, 15 minutes.
Oh God, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Can I ask you because you've spoken about disabilities and the fact that people perceive people with disabilities differently, or, you know, that they may not have desires and stuff. Can I ask you about dating and how you've found that over the years? Has it been easy or tough, or?
Oh yeah, so for me with dating, I always had told myself, probably won't get married, won't have kids, because I didn't really see many shows for people with vision impairment or people with disabilities, and any shows that I did see had a negative connotation with it. So, like, for example, the show that said The Undateables. So
I know.
Yeah, so like when you're growing up or even in your 20s, and if you see a show that's called The Undateables, then you're automatically going to think to yourself, okay, well, am I that kind of undesirable or am I that so low of a class? So, so that obviously the way society, media portray people with disabilities, again, that's all got to do with ableism. I suppose kind of dating was hard for me. I remember I basically was speed dating and ended up meeting this guy. And he was like, okay, how about we just go on a single date ourselves? So I ended up going on a single date with him. And I had my sunglasses in my handbag, the white cane under the chair. Again, this is an issue. When do you disclose about your disability? Whether it's through the work placement or interview, whether you're on a date, like when do you disclose? And now obviously if you walk into a door, then you kind of
know. You're either that or you're drunk.
Yeah. So like if you want to mask your disability, then you can just say, oh yeah, it's all the alcohol I'm drinking. But yeah, so anyway, that particular evening we were having a great time and all of this. And then so he went home, I went home, and I texted him and I was just like, oh, great date and everything. And he texted back, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then I texted him and I said, like, sorry, I just want to tell you something about myself. And then he was like, oh, what do you want to say? And I just said, by the way, I'm visually impaired. I'm registered as blind. And I think when I put the words registered as blind, like that was like probably an alarm bell for him for some reason. And then he just texts back saying, oh, even though he had told me previous then to that, up to that point, that he felt that the date went extremely well. Once I had mentioned about being registered as blind, he said, like, look, I don't think we're compatible. And I messaged saying why. And then he just said, because I wouldn't want my kids having a disability. Oh. And I'm looking for a wife, not just a fling type of thing. So I know that I don't want kids with disabilities. So I hope it held good for that guy, because basically, as I've said, that anybody can develop a disability through accident or illness. So I suppose there has been that situation that kind of put me off, guys. Then I've also had the kind of situation of, kind of aside from my disability, like ended up going on a date with this guy again through speed dating. He brought me down to Killarney, and then of course being a guy, he did this like revving of his car and like was going fast and then slow and fast, and so like just kind of showing off, right? But with doing that anyway, he kind of bust his engine, so the car broke down, right? So I was like, now this guy did know I was visually impaired, but anyway, the car broke down anyway, and like I was like, oh my God, like kind of, I just want to kind of go home type of thing. I don't want to be stuck here for the day. But anyway, he said to me, oh sure, look, we're stuck in Killarney. Where else would you want to be stuck? Like we have stunning views. And I'm like, okay, you still haven't figured out that I'm visually impaired. I can't even see you. Never mind the views. So
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of some of my dating experiences. I kind of have felt that, I don't know, kind of it has always just been weird trying to find a guy. Like, you can't do the whole thing of glance across the room and look into each other's eyes or anything like that.
Particularly if there's a bright light shining in that room, eh?
Yeah. So
You'd be like, let me find my shades. Before we come into the room, you were talking about the fact that you do a lot of corporate speaking, but you were invited into a company to talk to them about trust because they were salespeople and they had to earn the trust of the people that they were trying to sell to. I find that really interesting.
Yeah. So basically their employees kind of go out and they sell products, but to get their clients to buy the products, they have to I suppose, get them to buy the product. They have to trust you as a salesperson or whatever. So I was brought in anyway to talk about communication and trust. And this girl anyway had come to a guide running workshop that I'm doing. I did a guide running workshop in Dublin. I've done one in Galway and I've 2 other ones coming up, one in Letterkenny and one in Cork. So the one in Cork is in June. And this girl said, oh, I thought I understand all about your vision impairment. But actually then when she came to the guide running workshop, put on the sunglasses or put on the different glasses, because I have different types of glasses. She said then, actually, Sinead, I realised I knew nothing about your vision impairment because it was actually only through putting on the glasses that I realised what your actual kind of visual impairment
and
is.
what
like.
were the glasses? Tell me the glasses.
So some of the glasses have kind of Vaseline smeared on them to give it like a blurry effect. Some of them are completely blacked out. Some of them has spots on them. Some of them has tape at the side to block out your peripheral vision, only that you've central vision. Or some of them have glasses that the central vision is blocked out. And yeah, so she just kind of, it seemed to be a big light bulb moment for her coming to the guide running workshop. And then she brought me then in based on that to talk to her employees. And even the employees themselves felt that when I did a speech and then we went outside and we did a practical where each of the employees paired up with each other and then they did a guide run, like maybe run 200-300 meters and they were guided. And when they put on the glasses, they felt quite nervous and there was no trust there with their colleague. Would they guide them safely? And again, by the end of the practical exercise, they felt more confident with their colleague. But that was only happened through that experience. So you need to allow the experience to kind of build that trust with them. Yeah. And as well, there was 2 people there who were like best friends and automatically they just wanted to be paired up with each other, but we split them apart.
That's the right attitude. Can I ask you about being visually impaired or registered blind? Can you enjoy watching, and I'm saying this in inverted commas, a film or, how do you, or go to the cinema, can you enjoy those leisurely activities?
Yeah, I'm more focused on the listening part.
Okay.
And so like even growing up, that's kind of in some ways how I figured out I was visually impaired. That when I was 4, I really badly wanted to see the telly, the cartoons that was on the telly. And I leant in too close to the television to the point where my nose actually touched the television screen. And I got a static shock and I kind of came backwards and said to my parents, why do I have to look at everything up close? And they said, well, that's the way it's going to be. You just kind of have to get on with it and learn to adapt. And so then I just kind of I don't really know any different. So like all throughout my childhood, I've always sat very close to the television and say when I go to somebody's house, I don't know, instinctively I just go near the television. Then I kind of realise, oh Sinead, you're not in
you're not here to watch TV.
No, well, you're not here around other visually impaired people. Okay. Like this might seem a bit weird while you're sitting up so close to the telly. So then obviously sitting back from it then makes you more reliant on your hearing. When you go to cinema, it's I suppose it's good in some ways because the screen is so big that you do get to see it. But I suppose some of the time, like, you want to fully be able to see what's happening. Like, say, if maybe subtitles is coming up on the screen, then obviously I find that hard. Like, I've been to corporate speaking events and they're all about diversity and inclusion, and they play different videos that has no sound but just subtitles. And then that's like not helpful for me at all because I can't see it.
Do you point that out, Sinead, and say, listen, next time I want this to be
in
voiceovers?
in a subtle way I do. Like, I suppose like, I've learned a lot about myself as a speaker that I could nearly write a book now specifically on speaking. But like, say for example there, the beginning of this year I did a speech and somebody was at that speech who recommended me for another speech, and this other company contacted me and they said, oh, we need to bring you in because you're so funny. Now, when people bring me in, they always use this word, we're bringing you in because you're inspirational, right? So
I'm literally like embarrassed now that I use that word 40 times.
When I reply to people, I don't kind of fully refer to the inspirational thing, but maybe at some stage I might say it. But anyway, they all say, oh, we're bringing you in because you're inspirational. But this particular company, which stood out to me, was they never mentioned the word inspirational. They never said, oh, we're bringing you in because you're inspirational. All they kept saying was, we're bringing you in because you're so funny, right? So I started feeling under pressure that, okay,
stand-up comedian.
Like, I'm not a comedian. I haven't trained to be a comedian or anything like this. This is too much pressure. If you want a comedian, like, there's loads out there, hire a comedian. But anyway, every kind of Zoom call that I had with them pre-event, it was all about, oh, how funny I was. So I then said to myself, okay, I need to kind of look up jokes or something like that to incorporate them into my speech. So I kind of found that I was kind of coming away from my speech and becoming not fully me. And I suppose the point of what I'm trying to say to you is I did the speech. Now, the audience, they were happy at the end of it. But for me as a speaker, I came away from that speech thinking, okay, that was only maybe a 6 or a 7. And I kind of always rate myself afterwards. And I didn't get any bad comments. Maybe they felt there were bad comments, but they didn't give them anyway. But they were happy. But I came away feeling not happy. And then I just said, okay, for the next speech now, I'm just not doing that again. I'm not looking up about jokes or how to implement them or how to land them. I'm just going there. If they tell me to go there, talk about resilience, mindset, teamwork, diversity, inclusion, disability, if they're kind of what they want me to talk about, that's what I'm talking about. So then anyway, last week I did a speech and I just said, I'm just going and doing my speech, and didn't look up any funny jokes or whatever, and did my speech, and I got a standing ovation at the end. Now, not to highlight that I got a standing ovation, even though I highlight to John all the time that I got the standing ovation, but even though the reason why I highlight that is the main point to come out of that is that I kind of tried to change myself based on thinking that, oh, they want me to be funny. So I suppose what I'm trying to say in a very long-winded way is just stay true to yourself and be authentic. And then that's the power of and the uniqueness of whether it's you being a speaker or me being a speaker.
It was very long-winded. Inspirationally long-winded. Sinead, I could speak to you forever, but I know you're back. You're rushing back to Youghal now, aren't you? Yeah. So I was going to ask you, what piece of advice would you give young people today?
What piece of advice? I think that kind of realise that don't take life so seriously, as in that kind of it's not kind of permanent, that like the whole thing of life is to experience joy and pain. And so none of us get through life without experiencing pain. So that don't stay stuck in it. Like kind of, I suppose, depending on what the setback is, like if it's grief, dealing with death of a loved one, obviously that's going to take longer to bounce back or be resilient to than something else. But whatever setback you're kind of encountering, realise that just to move forward, to have movement, to have motion, that everything doesn't last forever. I think you can maybe get stuck in, okay, this is just always going to be the way it is. So just enjoy life, not to take it as seriously.
And Sinead Kane, what is the meaning of life?
Well, the meaning of life for me is basically, I suppose, finding your purpose. And the meaning of life is going to be different for everybody, depending on their values and beliefs. And I think as well, it's about serving others, being kind, compassionate, but yeah, mostly finding your purpose, being happy in the now, because like none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. And if I was to go tomorrow, I feel I've lived a good life in the sense that I've got to travel the world and that I've experienced all different types of people, that I don't just see the world from one lens. I don't just associate myself all the time with one specific person. I have empathy for different people.
Sinead, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Okay. I am honoured that you came on the pod, and thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.